Hi, I'm going to show you how to set up a Windows development environment if you want to start programming in PHP, or if you're already an experienced developer but want to try a new way of setting up an environment where you can build a web server that runs locally and works really well. So I've got a fresh install of Windows 11 here, and you can see there's not a lot going on yet. So I'm basically going to start completely from scratch, and I'm going to walk you through setting up a development environment with a full LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, and so on. So the first thing we're going to do is go into the browser and we're going to install Laragon. Okay, so Laragon is sort of like an integrated, full-featured PHP environment that you can download as a single package. It's really easy to install and use. And we're just going to download the full edition here. And this is going to make it pretty much a snap to get an environment set up. Now, something I will warn you about is we are currently actually using a user account that does not have administrative privileges. And the reason I'm doing this is because a lot of times in enterprise environments, you're going to be running with a configuration like that, right? You're not allowed to run your computer as admin. However, you still will need the ability to run your computer as an administrative user, or the ability to have access to an account so that you can get the stuff installed in the first place. Make sure Windows usually defaults you to not showing the extensions, which drives me crazy. We'll show the hidden items as well. So if we right click on that, we can run as admin. And we will normally have to enter a password here. I have the ultra secure setup of having no password for the admin account, but this is a demo setup. Okay, so our installer is starting to run. We'll pick English, just basically breeze through the settings. I'll use the default path and everything. If you change this, keep that in mind for certain commands that we'll run in the future. Next, default settings. So we'll run it when Windows starts. It will automatically create virtual hosts in your host file. And it'll install Notepad++, which is a decent text editor. Perfect, we're done. So let's restart the computer. All right, we're back in Windows in our normal user account, regular user account, and we'll notice a Laragon icon here. It should start up automatically, so give it a minute. It should start up. If it doesn't, you can double click on it. And something I'm going to do is go into the settings for the taskbar, and I will go down into the taskbar corner overflow and make sure the Laragon is turned on here. That'll make sure we don't have to keep fiddling around with this to find the icon, because we're going to be using this a lot to configure things. So if we open the interface for Laragon, we're going to see we've got a few buttons here to start things up and whatnot. So we already do have a functioning interface, but there are a couple of settings that I want to turn on. So if we go into the little gear icon, we can click on services and ports in the preference pane and make sure that SSL is enabled. Once we do that, we also should go down into Apache, right click on the Laragon icon down here, go into Apache, under SSL, add the Laragon CRT to the trust store. So we do this so that we don't have any errors when we're running SSL. We want to run a website with HTTPS, which is like basically a requirement these days. And that's done. So if we fire this guy up now, we will also see that we have to allow access through the firewall for Apache and MySQL. Okay, that should be good. We click the web button, that'll open our browser, and we see, nice. We have Apache 2.4, PHP 7.4, which is kind of out of date nowadays. And we're running Laragon. It tells you what your document root is. This is where you'll put your websites that you want to make. So perfect. So we have Laragon working, but we want to fix some of these problems with the way that it's set up. We should probably have the option to run a newer version of PHP. Let's close this for now. We are now going to install a package manager for Windows called Scoop. This makes it really easy to install things like PHP and lots of other stuff. We can get into a terminal by right-clicking on the Windows Start menu icon, and we have the option to open up a Windows terminal here. All right, so we'll also open up, I'm just gonna bump this over to the other side. We'll open up scoop.sh. And there are a couple of commands here that you just run at the PowerShell, and that'll get scoop installed. So let's do that. And this will run a little script. So perfect, we've got scoop installed. Next thing you're going to need to do with scoop is to install Git with it if you don't have Git already installed. Scoop install Git. Should be as simple as that. And with Git installed, we can install the extras or add the extras bucket. Scoop bucket add extras. And we will use that to install the Visual C++ redistributable, which a lot of packages are going to want. We need some administrative permissions for that. And now we can just copy and paste this command to remove the installer because we don't need it once it's installed. Perfect. So that is done. Next, we're going to make sure we have a bunch of packages that we need installed. You can install more than one at a time, which is handy. So let's do that. Well, let's install PHP, Composer, MySQL, Node.js, long-term support. I'll let that do its thing. Great, that is all done. So we are going to check everything's installed properly. Check PHP version 8.1.7, that's pretty recent. MySQL version, that looks good. And Node.js 16.15. All right, one problem that we might end up with, depending on when you're watching this and what's been going on with Node, is that NPM will show you these weird little errors. These warnings that the global is deprecated. So we just need to upgrade NPM to the latest by running a command like this. So that'll globally install the latest Node package manager. And then those little warnings shouldn't show up anymore once this is done. Okay, this is great. So now we have PHP installed, Node package manager, a bunch of other things we need. All right, so in order to actually be able to use these things inside of Laragon, we're going to have to link the paths into the Laragon installation directory. I'll show you what this looks like. So the way that Scoop actually works is it installs everything inside of a Scoop directory in your user folder. I'm going to just compact this view so you can see a little bit more here. So here's the Scoop folder. All your apps are installed here in the apps folder. And we have our MySQL, Git, PHP, and so on. And you'll notice that there's a little symlink here for the current version. What we are going to do is link this current folder into the installation directory for Laragon, which would be inside of bin and right here. So how do we do that? Well, the trick is you have to do it inside of PowerShell as an administrator. You can't do the symlinks as a standard user for some reason in Windows. So I have a little command that I'm just going to copy and paste out of my blog post about this, which I recommend you read. It will have a little bit less detail, but might be easier for some people to follow. So we just have to make sure that this is actually reflecting our current username, like the path to our users folder. And that looks good for PHP. So it looks like that command worked. And then we have one more command I'm going to copy and paste. And we're going to do this one, change user to our user's name, which is just user, because that was really creative. Now, of course, if you were using your own folder, you might have a special Windows variable for this, but that won't work great when you're running as administrator. So keep that in mind. I wish I could make this simpler by just using that variable. So we have the MySQL and PHP symlinked into Laragon. What we're going to do now is stop Laragon. This part is important. And by using the little menu, you can go under PHP version and select current. We can do the same thing for MySQL version current. And let's see what happens if we start that up. We have to reauthorize this or grant firewall access to the new version of MySQL. And if we go back to where we can click on this web button here, and it'll load up the page, and we should see PHP 8.1.7. So that's awesome. We're now up to date. Now, there's a couple more steps that I recommend you do. We've got all that done. If you work with Laravel, for example, it would be a good idea to actually install the Laravel installer. And you have to do this after you link it into Laragon, or it won't really work properly. Here we go. You got to make sure you're not running as administrator, so you can close that once you make the symlinks. Let's try that composer global require Laravel installer. Let's go into the Laragon www directory, and we'll spin up a new Laravel project. Laravel new. I'll just call it Laravel. Okay, we finally got that installed. Took a second. So let's see if this thing actually runs. We should be able to go to laravel.test. And it doesn't look like it's loading. The reason for that is that when you create a new website, you actually have to reload Apache's configuration, and Laragon will detect that it needs to update the host file with that new domain name. Once we're done that, we should be able to load our laravel.test. There we go. Perfect. And for bonus points, we can run it with HTTPS. And we see that there's a little lock icon here, connection secure, no certificate errors or anything like that. Perfect. And it's really easy to spin up as many websites as you want inside this www directory. And then you can just, once you reload Laravel, or Laragon at least, you will just be able to go there and have it work. So it's a little bit of magic that makes your life easy. So awesome. Now, if you want to create a database, Laragon makes that fairly easy. You can go into the UI here, click the database button. And the first time we connect, we're going to have to create a new session. I'll just name it root here. And there's no password by default. You can always set one later, but let's open that connection up. So we're on the database, and we can right click here, create a new database, and I'm going to call this one Laravel. So Laravel should already be configured to use a database called Laravel for the demo app with no password, using root as the username. So if we go into Laravel in the command line, we should be able to just run our PHP artisan migrate, and it'll create all the default database tables for that application. So this is excellent. We have a development environment set up. So all you really need to do now is install your IDE. Now I recommend using PHP Storm from JetBrains, which should be right here, jetbrains.com/phpstorm. So you can always download it as a trial. VS Code also works great if you want to use that, and that one doesn't cost you any money. PHP Storm has fairly hefty licensing fees, especially for enterprise, but if you're a serious working PHP developer, it's well worth it. And if you're a student, you can actually get a free license. So well worth checking out. We're going to install that, create a desktop shortcut, associate it with our web developer files. Great, let's run this guy. Beautiful little splash page that they have. Now you have to log into a JetBrains account in order to activate it for license or whatever. And we'll activate our trial license. So there we go. We get a month-long trial that we can use. We can close. So let's open up our project. We're going to have that Laragon folder, www.laravel. And we can trust the project because we created it ourselves, sort of. Perfect. So we see our little README file here and all the files for our project. One thing we can do is we can go into the database tab and under data source properties, we can add a new data source for our MySQL database right here. So we're going to call this Laravel. We'll use the host Laravel. Authentication, user will just be root with no password. Now, I do recommend that you create a password here, but just to keep this video short, I didn't go through the process of creating a user and assigning access to the database. If you'd like to see that, leave a comment and let me know that you'd like something like that. So we're going to say database is called Laravel. So there's our connection string. And notice here, we are missing the driver files, so we're going to need to download those. Should only take a second. Click apply, test connection. And it succeeded. So this is a really nice feature of PHP Storm because it actually has awareness of what all is in your database. And we can see all of our database tables right here. When you write an SQL query in PHP Storm, it will immediately tell you if you're trying to access a table that doesn't exist or a field that doesn't exist or if the query doesn't work, and that's a really slick feature. So super quick overview of just setting up PHP Storm. If you don't want to pay for an IDE, sure, you can use something like VS Code, or I still use Sublime quite often as well. That's a great product. That's it. And we now have an awesome web server we can use for testing. If we are not developing all the time, we can always stop it so it doesn't use system resources. It's really easy to change the version if you want to revert to an old version of PHP for testing or something like that. You can even switch it up, and if you don't like Apache, you can also run Nginx or something, which a lot of people prefer. So this approach allows you to use the ease and simplicity of this integrated Laragon bundle along with a really slick and easy to use package manager like Scoop, and kind of get the best of both worlds and make sure you can run Laragon with some really up-to-date packages. So that should be really useful if you're a working PHP developer or you're trying to learn PHP and you're running Windows. It's really a nice setup. I hope that this works for you. If you have any trouble getting anything going or configuring anything, or you run into some stumbling blocks, let me know and leave a comment below, or go over to my blog post and comment on that. And I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to talking to you at some point in the future. Bye.